Example number 3. It reads, given the parabola f of x is equal to x minus 1, all in brackets squared minus 4, A, find the inverse of f of x is equal to x minus 1, all in brackets squared minus 4. The inverse, we always get it by interchanging or swapping x and y. So it will be y is equal to x minus 1, or that squared, minus 4. So we are now swapping. X is equal to y minus 1 squared minus 4. Now let's take this to that side. It will be x plus 4 is equal to y minus 1, or this squared. Let us find the square root both sides. Plus or minus the root of x plus 4 is equal to y minus 1. Making y the subject, it means the minus 1 must go to the left hand side. Our y will be equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of x plus 4. Now, replacing our y with f inverse of x, we have f inverse of x is 1 plus or minus the square root of x plus 4. This is the inverse of f. And part B is saying, write down the turning point of f of x and of f inverse of x. Well, f of x is written in the turning point form, which means we can actually read them, the coordinates of the turning point of f, which happens to be, in this case, it's 1 and minus 4. What about f inverse? We interchange x and y, or we swap x and y, which means it's minus 4 and 1. That is very, very important for us all to always remember. If we are given f, any point on f can be written down if it is now reflected in the line y is equal to x. Part C. Part C is saying, sketch the graphs of f and f inverse on the same axis. Well, the turning point we have, but what do we need? We also need the x cut, and on the x, y is 0, which means our x minus 1, or this squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Our x minus 1, or this squared, is equal to 4. Our x minus 1 is equal to, taking square root both sides, plus or minus 2. So our x will be equal to 1 plus or minus 2, which means our x is actually minus 1 or 3, which means f will cut the x-axis at minus 1 and 0, and also at 3 and 0. These are very important. And we also need the y cut. So on the y, x is equal to 0. So you have your x minus 1, or this squared minus 4 is equal to, we're saying is equal to y in this case. So we want to find the y when x is 0. So it will be 0 minus 1, or this squared minus 4 is equal to y. So this is 1 minus 4 is equal to y. Our y therefore will be minus 3. And this is what we have on our graph. This is what we have on our graph. We have the point minus 1, 0 and 3, 0. Please, we are looking at f, where it is cutting the x-axis, and it will cut the, so the blue graph is our f, and the red graph is our f inverse, and the yellow graph is our y is equal to x. So let us now explain how things are happening here. We only have drawn the graph of f by identifying the x-cut and the turning point. Then we were able to draw the blue graph. Now, in order for us to have the red graph, we reflect each and every point on the line y is equal to x, which means the point 1 minus 4 becomes minus 4, 1, which is here. And the point minus 1, 0 becomes 0 minus 1, which is this one. And the point 0 minus 3 becomes minus 3, 0. And the point 3, 0 becomes 0, 3. That is why we come up with the red graph. Very, very important. Now we are moving on to part D. Part D is saying, decide if the inverse is a function. Now, when you are looking at this graph here, which is the red graph, which is the inverse, if you draw any vertical line, which becomes the vertical line test, it cuts twice. Therefore, by the vertical line test, F inverse is not a function. It is not a function. If not, state the restrictions on the domain of f of x so that the inverse graph is a function. That question we have met it earlier on, and we are meeting it again here. I said, if you are restricting the domain, you go straight to the turning point of your f. Then at this point, we have x is equal to 1. So it's either we are taking this only, or we are taking this only. So the turning points will tell us how to restrict our domain. So it will be x is less or equal to 1, or x is greater or equal to 1. We just use the coordinates of the turning point. Please understand.
Sure.
Yes. Now part D goes on to say, so that the inverse graph is a function. Yes. If we are going to say this x greater or equal to 1, we are talking about this graph here. Which means this one goes along with this part only. And it means this other part is removed. Which means this here from here to there is now a function because it passes the vertical line test as well. And if we are considering this portion, it goes along with this portion and it also becomes a function. That is why we said our restriction for the domain should be x less or equal to 1 or x greater or equal to 1. Let's move on to part E. Sketch the graphs of F inverse using the domain from part D above, then write down the domain and the range of F inverse. It's already drawn for us. In actual fact, we are saying we taking this part and we draw this part only. We leave this, we leave that. Then on the other graph, we draw this only and we draw that as well. Which means we are doing it on separate graphs for us to see the restriction of our x, which is the domain, and we get the inverse also being a function. Very important for us to always remember. And it says, then write down the domain and the range of F inverse of x. Very important. Boys and girls, we are looking at this part only. What is the range and the domain of this part? We can see this is x is greater or equal to 1. That is the domain, and the range is y is greater or equal to -4, because it's starting from here going up, so it's greater or equal to -4. So this now gives us the domain and range of the inverse. The inverse now becomes, this is for f. Now for f inverse, it will be x is greater or equal to -4. That is the domain. And the range will be y is less or equal to 1. Please take note, we have only dealt with this part and we have dealt with this part. We still need to talk about that. So for that one, our f is x is less or equal to 1. And our range is y is greater or equal to -4. You see, from here it goes, this graph is satisfied. So this now helps us to write down the domain and range of f inverse. So our x will be greater or equal to -4. You can see from here, this is the graph we are talking about. X is greater or equal to -4, and our y will be less or equal to 1. You can see from here, this is the portion that we are talking about. It is less or equal to 1. Yes.